Order, order. Peter Bedford to move the motion.
Thank you, Mr Vickers, and it's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship. I beg to move this House to consider the impact of VAT registration threshold on SMEs. It was Napoleon Bonaparte that once said, "England is a nation of shopkeepers." But as often the case with Napoleon, he was wrong. England, indeed the UK, is a nation of entrepreneurs. Across the UK, the early risers, the late night grafters, the men and women who channel their entrepreneurial spirit into building businesses and serving their communities, who form the backbone of our economy. Yet, we in this place sometimes let them down. And this is certainly the case with the current nonsensical VAT registration threshold. Right now, businesses in the UK have to be VAT registered when their turnover reaches just £90,000. An arbitrary figure, a cliff edge, and once crossed, a small business is hit with added regulatory compliance costs and the need to charge their customers 20% more for their services. Without wanting to preempt the Minister's response, I am well aware of the fact that the UK has one of the highest thresholds in Europe, but that is not the point. What I'm arguing for today is boldness, to unleash the great British entrepreneurial spirit once again. It was a positive move by the previous Conservative government to increase the threshold to £90,000, and I also recognise the complexities surrounding the Windsor framework. But when we voted to leave the European Union in 2016, we wanted to take back control of our money, our borders and our laws. So I put it to this House that we should relook at this and look to include Northern Ireland businesses with an increased VAT registration threshold too. Mr Vickers, as a chartered accountant by profession, I've seen firsthand the implications the UK's tax regime can have on businesses. I enjoy conversations about the economy and business growth, and one recent example stands out from a constituency surgery that I held. I met with Chris and Annie Ensel, talented entrepreneurs running a thriving wedding photography business, Bloom Weddings. Joined by their daughter, they told me of their success, but also of their frustration. They've become increasingly concerned about approaching and potentially surpassing the VAT registration threshold cliff edge. And they now face the agonising decision to limit the number of weddings they agree to service, or having to pass on increased cost to their customers, which of course would limit their competitiveness. Therefore, I put it to the Minister, who is part of a government that say they are going for growth, is that fair? And how does this encourage more people like Chris and Annie to build up their businesses? In the government's manifesto, they claimed they understand. Small firms, entrepreneurs and the self-employed face unique challenges. Yet we have seen them eat into SME profit margins by increasing national insurance contributions and the rise in the national minimum wage. We've also seen them add more and more regulatory burden through the Employment Rights Bill, which sets to add £5 billion to the costs of UK businesses. But today is an opportunity for the Minister to show real support for small businesses, such as those in my Mid Leicestershire constituency, by committing to review the VAT registration threshold. Mr Vickers, I regret to say that I'm not overly optimistic. When the previous government rightly increased the threshold, Sir Edward Troop, a Labour tax advisor, ridiculed the idea, claiming halving the threshold would somehow encourage growth. And perhaps even more shockingly, the current Minister for Pensions has proposed slashing the threshold to a derisory £30,000.
Would the honourable member give way?
I'll give way.
Would the honourable member agree with me that this just demonstrates that this Labour government do not understand, or indeed on the side of how our small businesses should be able to operate? Not only is this an impact of VAT registration, but this is the impact of employers' national insurance, minimum wage, business rates increasing. I could go on. Does he not agree with me that this actual government that we have now does not understand how small businesses want to grow, operate and thrive?
I thank my honourable friend for his intervention, and I absolutely agree. What we've seen over the last year, particularly in the budget and recent announcements, is measures that actually stifle the growth of SMEs and stifle the growth of small businesses. And I thank him for raising that today, because it's something that I'm passionate about supporting them in order for not just the economy to grow, but in order to create jobs and opportunities for all. To the small family business, I say, I will always support you, and I will never support such proposals to slash the VAT threshold to such low levels. What's even more frustrating is the fact that industry, or the voice of industry, has not been heard. Their calls have fallen on deaf ears. The Federation of Small Businesses have previously highlighted the extra bureaucracy of being VAT registered adds, on average, £4,100 to the running costs of a business. UK hospitality also note that there have been missed opportunities to be bolder to alleviate regulatory burdens on the hospitality sector. I'll give way.
Thank you, Member, for giving way. Just on the issue of the Federation of Small Businesses, I don't know if he's aware, but the FSB in Northern Ireland just this morning released a report about the complications that the Windsor framework is providing for small businesses in Northern Ireland. Would you agree with me that SMEs are the backbone of the UK economy in all regions, and we need to try and do whatever we can to reduce bureaucracy rather than increase it, which is what the Windsor framework has achieved?
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. I absolutely agree. As a unionist myself, I want to see all parts of the UK thrive and grow, and that includes Northern Ireland. So I think this equally applies to Northern Ireland as it does to everywhere else in the Union. As I was saying, the UK hospitality suggests that they would in fact like to see the VAT rate cut to 12.5% for the industry, and I think that proposal has merits. And I would like to encourage the Minister to look at this. And finally, Mr Vickers, I recently met with the ICAW, and they were clear that confidence by small businesses is in decline. They would like to see the whole VAT system simplified and the registration threshold reviewed. This would reduce compliance costs, but also would enable them to grow beyond the restrictive cliff edge that is currently in place. The Minister may not be a fan of Margaret Thatcher, our first female Prime Minister, but she understood if you work hard, you should have the opportunity to succeed. And the government's role is to create the conditions for that success. That's why she launched the Enterprise Allowance Scheme, which helped create now famous brands Superdry, Creation Records. But if the Minister wants a more contemporary example of a state supporting businesses to grow, then he should look at our good friends in Singapore. Firstly, as is well documented, corporation tax is low, but more specifically for small businesses, they have the Pioneer Certificate incentive that encourages start-ups of undersubscribed industries. Now, I'm not asking the Minister for that. I know that'd be too bold. But what I am asking for is a modest, sensible change that would make a real difference to entrepreneurs across the country. Raise the VAT registration threshold. Push it beyond £90,000. Do it for the small businesses who want to grow, to diversify and to serve their communities. But also do it for the economy, for consumers, those who will benefit from lower prices and greater choice. And above all, do it for the spirit of enterprise that has always defined the United Kingdom.